Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're journeying back in time to explore the rise, fall, and legacy of the Great Library of Alexandria. We're going to dive right into the incredible power and, well, the profound fragility of human ideas. Let's get started. Imagine standing in the bustling ancient harbor of Alexandria. Just close your eyes for a second. You can almost feel the salty Mediterranean breeze on your face, right? And right in front of you, these massive wooden vessels are pulling into port. Ship after ship arrives, carrying stories, histories, and secrets from literally every corner of the world. You see, the rulers here, they didn't just want a prosperous trading hub. They had a truly audacious dream. They wanted to build a library that gathered every single piece of knowledge humankind could possibly find. It was a massive, unprecedented logistical effort. They were confiscating, copying, and collecting stories from every civilization they encountered. It was, without a doubt, an absolute golden age of intellectual ambition. Okay, let's dive into exactly what this place was, because we really need to clear up a massive misconception here. When we hear the word library, we immediately picture quiet aisles of bookshelves, right? Maybe checking out a novel for the weekend. But Alexandria was actually a research institute centuries ahead of its time. It was not merely a book collection. This requires a complete paradigm shift in how we view this place. It was a thriving, bustling campus of intellect where scholars lived, fiercely debated, and collaborated. Honestly, it was far more akin to a modern cutting-edge university or a high-level think tank than a simple repository for dusty scrolls. The sheer scale of what they actually managed to gather together in one place is just staggering. Copies of scrolls poured in across borders and language barriers, coming from Greece, Persia, all the way to India. And they weren't just collecting fun historical anecdotes either. These scholars were actively attempting to master the universe. Just imagine walking through these towering halls, completely surrounded by the greatest breakthroughs in astronomy, mathematics, medicine, geography, and philosophy. They brought the greatest thoughts from the greatest minds across the globe under a single roof. They were literally attempting to synthesize all human understanding. Now, it's one thing to collect scrolls, but it's entirely another to produce world-changing knowledge. We're talking about real, concrete, human achievements born right within those walls. You had figures like Euclid, laying down the exact mathematical foundations for geometry that we are literally still using in classrooms today. And then you have Eratosthenes. This is truly mind-blowing. Using the collaborative environment of this institute, he calculated the Earth's circumference with stunning accuracy. And how did he do it? By basically using nothing but the shadows cast by a stick and his own brilliant grasp of geometry. And this was centuries before the invention of modern scientific instruments. These weren't just abstract philosophers sitting around. They were pioneers, actively decoding the physical world. For centuries, the Great Library of Alexandria stood tall as humanity's absolute pinnacle of learning. But, well, as we all know, greatness doesn't always last forever. Which brings us to a rather haunting question. What really happened to the library? How does an institution of such immense power, scale, and importance simply vanish? It's a mystery that has captivated the public for generations. So let's pivot now from the library's glorious peak to the dark reality of its downfall. So, what was the destruction actually like? We really need to separate Hollywood fiction from historical fact here. The popular myth is certainly dramatic, that the entire library was destroyed in one night by a single, catastrophic, apocalyptic fire, sending all human knowledge up in smoke. But the reality? The truth is actually much more complicated and, in a lot of ways, much more tragic. It was a slow, agonizing decline over centuries. There was no single night of sudden cinematic flames. Let's walk through this gradual decline, because it was really a series of compounding tragedies. It all started with collateral damage during Julius Caesar's wars, kind of the inevitable consequence of brutal conflict spilling over into the intellectual sphere. From there, ongoing political instability just continued to rock the region. And of course, political chaos inevitably leads to economic decline. You simply cannot run a sprawling, world-class research institute without massive funding. As the economy faltered, the library's budget just vanished. Ultimately, though, the most heartbreaking cause of all took over, and that was pure neglect. Over time, as priorities shifted, the brilliant scholars left, the fragile scrolls degraded in the damp air, and the once vibrant halls simply fell silent. But hey, the story doesn't end in pure despair. The physical papyrus scrolls might be gone, but the spirit of Alexandria absolutely survives. Today, modern institutions like the stunning Bibliotheca Alexandrina in Egypt try to carry forward that ancient, ambitious mission of learning and global discovery. And why does this matter for us today? because it proves that the human desire to gather, protect, and share knowledge is incredibly resilient. We're still building these modern temples of learning, still trying to connect the corners of the world, exactly like those ancient rulers dreamed of doing all those centuries ago. As we draw to a close, there's a fundamental lesson we really need to remember. The Great Library reminds us just how powerful ideas can be, but also how remarkably fragile the physical mediums that hold them are. On one hand, the ideas generated there, like Euclid's math, were powerful enough to shape human civilization for millennia. But on the other hand, the scrolls and the institutions themselves were completely vulnerable to politics, economics, and just time itself. It forces us to ask ourselves how we are protecting our own knowledge today. The loss of so many ancient works means we may never know all the brilliant scientific and philosophical secrets that just vanished into the sands of time. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how it disappeared, but how much of our story disappeared with it. It's a really haunting realization, isn't it? When those ancient scrolls crumbled, we didn't just lose cold data. We lost irreplaceable chapters of our own human story, and the voices of ancestors we will literally never get to hear again. It forces us to ask one final vital question. If our massive digital libraries were wiped out tomorrow, what vital parts of our story would disappear into the void forever? Think about that for a while. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.